I think that it's important that we be mindful of how we're using technology and social media, especially if we're trying to become more mindful parents, if we're trying to heal, we're trying to make sure that we are the best versions of ourselves for our kids. Our kids deserve that.
Yo soy la madre, I'm the creator. Yo soy la reina, I am the maker. You can bow down now or bow down later. I don't need you to be my validator. I am the healer, la curandera. I'm starting fires, don't need madera. Deep as an ocean, light as a feather. Bring on the dragons, I am the slayer. Madre, creator, I am madre.
I'm your host, Amber Ivana, and this is Mom's New Identity podcast. First, let me say I'm glad you're here. On this podcast, my goal is to help fellow mothers redefine motherhood on their terms. How would I do that, you ask? Great question. By having honest, vulnerable, and sometimes even uncomfortable conversations about parenting, motherhood, childhood trauma, and mental health. We do this so we can challenge the ideas of what society tells us we're supposed to be and do as mothers and as women. My hope is that when we as mothers begin to heal and be true to ourselves, we can begin thriving instead of just surviving. Hello and welcome back to Mom's New Identity. I'm your host, Amber Ivana. Let's get into this episode. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see I got a little bit different setup. Trying to be, I don't know if it looks a little more talk showy. So if you like it, let me know in the comments if you like this whole setup instead of being so close and like I'm a news anchor. I want this to feel like a fireside chat, if you will. So I hope that you like this backdrop. So you're going to get used to seeing me like this a little bit more often. If you watch this on YouTube, if you're listening, you can go watch this on YouTube by clicking the description. But today's episode, I think I kind of made mention of it on my social media on Instagram of what I'm going to be talking about here, but this one might ruffle some feathers because this seems to be a topic that seems to have a very split opinion about. And I will say that this episode is not intended to make mothers or parents feel bad about their choices that we're going to go over here in a minute, but more so just to bring awareness and so that you can make an informed decision. If there is any episode that I ask that you share, it's this one, because this is about ultimately protecting our children. That's really what it comes down to. And at the end of the day, your kid is not my kid. How you choose to parent your kid and your parenting decisions are your choice alone. And so while I'm not here to tell you what to do, I will say that as a parent, having had this perspective that I'm going to share with you brought to my attention in the last year or so, it caused me to change how I show up online and social media. So before we get into the episode, just some quick reminders. You can follow on social media, on Instagram to become part of the community. I do have TikTok. However, I'm going to be stepping back a little bit more from TikTok as far as being active on there and just really building community at Instagram. And I'm highly considering starting a Facebook group so that I can connect with you all. And I honestly don't really like Facebook. So if y'all have any recommendations for a better app for community, that would be fantastic, because I'm really not a fan of Facebook. I'm just not. But if it means that it's the most effective way to build a free community of people, I will certainly do that. So by the time this episode is posted, I will probably post on my social media and ask about community, get some ideas and perspectives and opinions on what people prefer to use as far as a medium for community, if it's Facebook groups or if it's anywhere else. But that's something that's going to be in the works. But again, if you want to connect with me more on social media, you can find me on Instagram at moms.new.identity, TikTok as well. But again, like I said, I will probably be stepping back a little bit from that. But I'd love to get to know you all who are my regular listeners and just more about your story. And I will be having more guests. I'm working on getting more guests on the show soon here too. So I'm excited for y'all to hear more stories from other people and their perspectives and other moms and such. I think that about covers it for just, a recap. But today's episode is kind of prompted as a result of the ice cream man's still back here. So if you hear the ice cream man, just know that's what that is. Makes me want ice cream. It makes me want ice cream real bad. I'm embarrassing myself. It's fine. It's cool. I love to make voices. That's something that that I do on a regular, and I think I need to show the world my personality a little bit. So if you're like, this girl's weird, well then, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. That's just who I am. Anyways, my ADHD is like, woo, 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 squirrel. Today's episode is prompted as a result of really, I don't know if you all have seen it, but it's the egg cracking challenge that some parents are doing to their kids. Like they like crack an egg on their forehead and they, and then they post it for shits and giggles. And it seems to me that like it's very like split as far as like people are like extremely opposed to it and saying like, this is awful, don't do this to your kids. And then other people are like, it's not that serious, like kids know how to brush stuff off, my kids are fine, blah 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 blah, right? But I think that that's probably part of a larger conversation about social media as it relates to our kids. And I have to, before I even go any further, I do have to send a huge thank you to my friend Camille, who I've met. Actually, I met on TikTok, oddly enough. She goes by Wifey Chat on social media, on Instagram and TikTok. And then she also has her own clothing line, 6440 Graphics. So check her out. But she's a big reason why I started to really reevaluate how much of my kid, my daughter specifically, because I was still pregnant with my son at the time, how much of her just presence I allowed online. I saw it as a really normal thing. You share pictures of your kids, no big deal, like friends and family see it, blah, blah, blah. But, she was one of like the few people I think I've ever really heard talk about not sharing your kids online and not showing their faces. And she doesn't show her child on social media. And I was like, okay, this is different. Right. And, she began to talk more about it. And, she still is a huge advocate for that kind of thing. I think she talks about it on her blog. But she was a big reason why I really started to think about like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be sharing my daughter, because there's so many strangers on the internet, on TikTok, on Instagram, whoever, that could be watching my kid. And at first it seemed kind of like, oh, I don't know if at first I would like only share videos and pictures of her with like close friends and family. And then very quickly I like changed my Instagram page and like started a new one and decided that I didn't want to show her face at all. Not with close friends, not with anybody. Anybody that was close enough to me could gain access to, pictures of her if I really know them well and trust them well. And even then, I'm still very particular about that. And the reason for this is really because there's been a handful of stories. Ren Eleanor is one of them. If you want to look that up, just a fair warning, it's like the story and everything it's really disturbing. But Ren Eleanor is a young girl who was clearly being exploited by her parent on social media, and people requesting really weird things that she do online, and then the mom just, doing those things. And the response is often, well, I have no control over what creeps do. Like, they should be the ones being held accountable. And yes, I agree 100% that is the case. However, if you were to discover, and let me ask you this, okay? Because I know this would be the case for me. Hey friend, are you enjoying the episode so far? I sure hope so. If you're a fan of Moms.new.identity podcast, I just want to remind you to take a moment to follow the show, drop a rating or a review, and last but certainly not least, be sure to share this episode or just the show itself with friends, family, or anybody else that might benefit from the show, both in person or on social media. If you're watching this on YouTube, just be sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to click that bell so you can be notified whenever a new episode is released. Please know that your continued support is what will help this podcast grow and reach more people who need to hear the messages that we share on here. Thanks again, and let's get back to the episode. If you were to discover that someone took just a random innocent picture of your child on the internet and then use that in whatever image, in whatever capacity, I think you all can kind of catch my drift, and you came across that, how would you feel? Think about it. Like, if you were to somebody sent you a video or an image of your child's face on an AI image or a video that looked very real, because people are getting, like, deepfakes are insanely realistic looking. If you don't know what deepfakes are, you can Google that. Hey friend, are you enjoying the episode so far? I sure hope so. If you're a fan of Moms' Identity podcast, I just want to remind you to take a moment to follow the show, drop a rating or a review, and last but certainly not least, be sure to share this episode or just the show itself with friends, family, or anybody else you know that might benefit from the show, both in person or on social media. If you're watching this on YouTube, just be sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to click that bell so you can be notified whenever a new episode is released. Please know that your continued support is what will help this podcast grow and reach more people who need to hear the messages that we share on here. Thanks again, and let's get back to the episode.
But imagine someone sent that to you. How would you feel seeing that image? You would be sick to your stomach. But the fact is, that stuff's actually happening. It's not a theory. It's actually happening. And not only that, with the way that technology is advancing, facial recognition technology, there's also a security risk of your child's identity possibly being stolen later on in life, because we don't know what kind of technology is going to be present in the future, but we do know it is going in that direction. Biometric scanning of any sorts like that stuff is becoming very commonplace. But let me also give you an analogy, okay? And that is, say you were to print out 1,000 pictures of your child, same picture. It just seems like just a regular picture of their face. And on the back of it, you wrote their date of birth, your address, your child's parents' name, so yourself and whoever their other parent is, where they go to school. Imagine that you did that, and then you decide to take those pictures and you go somewhere, and just stay with me, okay? I know this seems weird. Nobody would actually do this. But if you were to just toss those pictures all over town for anybody to pick up, remember, this is a picture of your child, an identifiable picture, an identifiable picture of their face. And then on the back of it, you put all sort of information: their date of birth, what school they go to, who their parents are, where their parents work, all of those things. And imagine you just threw them all over town. Would you ever do that? Hell no. Nobody would ever think to do that. That's stupid, right? But that's what a lot of people are doing online. Think about it. You know how easy it is to search your name, to find out who you are, to Google your image and see, oh, okay, that's who that person is. And then to then share what school they go to. Just think about this. This is a really awful scenario to imagine. And while, we have a million things to worry about as parents, and a lot of them being out of our control, this is not necessarily something that is out of our control. We can decide how much information that we share when it comes to our kids. And I remember a big creator on TikTok saying one time that someone in one of her lives commented her, put her address and a picture of the front of her home or something like that, her full address. And she said in that moment, she was so grateful that she had never shown her kids' faces online. Because immediately it's how I don't know who's in this live. I don't know who these people are. How could they possibly get access to their kids? Not only that, you don't know what kind of weird vendetta or obsession someone could develop over you or your children and then track you down. Okay, so I think I'm done with scaring you all, but this is super important. Now to the next point of, if you consider yourself someone who is trying to be a conscious parent, someone who's trying to break generational cycles, I want you to hear me on this. Okay, there's two things really that I think could result in the overusage of social media or our phones just in general when it comes to our children. And I say to the parents who are parenting in this way because I know that we are doing our best to ensure that we don't pass on any sort of trauma to our children. We're trying to heal. We're trying to ensure that stuff and the pain stops with us, right? This is why I want to stress this part so much, okay? There is already a group, I want to say Gen Alpha, there's already a group of preteens, teenagers that are coming out and saying that they're influencer babies and they're children of content creators that family vlog channels on YouTube and such, that just say that their images are all over the place and they have had people stalk them and they're extremely fucking traumatized from something that they had absolutely no control over. None. They did not have a say in what was shared online. Not at all. Imagine like someone taking your image and just sharing it all over, sharing really intimate, vulnerable parts of your life that maybe you wanted to keep private, and just putting that all over the internet. Like, as much as, again, I know that the tone that's coming across may seem condescending, and I apologize, because I feel very strongly about this, okay? Again, at the end of the day, your kids are your kids, okay? But I will tell you this, that if you know better and you come across this information and you choose not to change your online presence or protect your children's privacy or keep what information you share about them to a minimum or to a very small, intimate audience, there is a good chance that later on, your kid, you may have a challenging relationship with them. There's going to be some anger or resentment about your part in not allowing them the autonomy of what they share online. Because when they're so small, especially when they're like toddlers or babies, they have no say. They have absolutely no comprehension. And even, I would say, grade school age, there's not really a lot of comprehension about how the internet works, and unless it's explained to them. I say this with care and candor, is that if you are already in this place where you are sharing your kids and everything about them online for the sake of gaining followers, for the sake of trying to make money, because the fact is, a lot of us, we're trying to make money, okay? We're just trying to get by. We're just kind of trying to keep food on the table. And I think that there's maybe a handful of maybe mom influencers or creators that just blew up, and they weren't thinking like, oh, I'm going to use my kid for likes, right? That I don't think that was the intention. I think the intention was, hey, like, people relate to this, so I'm going to share it. People relate to this. And I get that to an extent, but there's other ways to be relatable that don't involve oversharing information about your child. And if that is difficult for you to come to terms with, like, what can I share, or what can I be relatable about when this is my life, right? Like, my kids are my everything. I get that. Like, right now, the stage of my life, my kids are my everything. Everything revolves around them. However, I can share about my experiences, or, talk about those kinds of things, or do the funny trends and stuff like that without ever actually showing my kids. I have done that. And mind you, I have already posted videos and such of trends, like with my kids and showing their faces, and I have taken that all down. And I don't know who has access to that. I don't. I hope that their images are not being abused, but at this point, I have no control over that. But my question really to you is your social media presence, or all of those things, really that much more important than protecting your child's privacy? Let's be real here. Is it? Like, I know you have to make a living. I get that. But when I think about it, at the end of the day, like, I have found ways to to show up online and talk about motherhood and share my motherhood experience without showing my children, at least not their faces, or very minimal. I don't even think many people know my kids' names unless they know me. So even if I were to show my kids' faces, they probably wouldn't even know their full name. So the point I'm trying to make really is that just because you have been doing something the same way for so long doesn't mean that it can't be changed. And I want you to think of this in terms of our experiences with our own parents. A lot of us had parents who were just emotionally distant and maybe abusive, or just resorted to corporal punishment. And they were just doing what they knew how, what their inner circle was doing, what everyone around them was doing. They were just going with the tide, going with the flow, right? However, the idea of not physically punishing your children or chastising them or embarrassing them, that parenting method has been around for a lot longer than I think a lot of us think. Like, gentle parenting, conscious parenting, respectful parenting, that parenting style has been around for a while. It's just only now becoming more prevalent. I remember seeing a creator one time who was talking about how her boomer parents, basically, they were respectful parenting. They took that same approach with her, and they were boomers. And that is like one of the biggest generations that doesn't do that. That's like anti-gentle parenting. So a lot of us look at our childhood and how maybe we were treated in childhood and think, damn it, like, why couldn't my parents do better? Like, didn't they know better? Didn't they? Like, I look at my kids and I just think, like, I don't feel right putting my hands on them. Like, I feel guilty, or I feel bad when I yell at them, like all of those things. And there's like an anger and a frustration, like, how come my parents couldn't change their behavior? And that's how I want you to consider this. If like this is really hitting you, like, damn, maybe I need to take my kid off the internet. Again, what you do is your choice. But I think in a handful of years, probably 10 to 15 years, we're going to see the consequences of these actions, and more than likely they're going to be very negative. And I would rather take extra steps, maybe even unnecessary steps, to protect the identity of my children and their privacy than run the risk of compromising it and my relationship with them. I know that seems really intense. So another account that I follow on TikTok, and actually she's on Instagram too, is Mom Uncharted. I think it's mom.uncharted, but she talks about this a lot. And she's very passionate about this, and she does not hold back as far as like, she's just very candid about her message and like minimizing sharing children on the internet. She provides a lot of useful resources and information, and just like gives a lot of examples. So if you want to know more about protecting your child's safety, you can follow Mom Uncharted. Like I said, my friend Camille at Wifey Chat talks a little bit about this on her page on TikTok, so you can check out those pages. But that's I think I've spent enough time kind of hammering that point in. And I've been guilty of this, right? Like, I've been guilty of sharing my kids. And even now, sometimes I think like, oh man, like my page would probably grow a lot faster if I was doing some of the things that these other moms are doing. And I'm like, why even go there? Right? Like, why am I going to compare that? Why am I going to say like, oh, I should do what these other moms are doing, that's why they're growing so fast? But it's like, at the end of the day, that doesn't matter as much as protecting my kids and their images. It doesn't. I don't care if it takes me forever to grow, if it means that I have to swim upstream. I have to do something different than what all the other moms out there are doing, or at least the ones that are, sharing a lot of detail about their kids. This is urgent. Okay. Now, the next thing when it comes to social media and our phones, and this I'm actively working on because it is really hard, especially as a content creator, is minimizing our own screen time, especially around our kids. I have noticed in the last week or so that usually in the second half of the day, the schedule is that my husband goes to work, or my husband's here in the morning with me and the kids, and then right around their nap time, he heads out to work, and then I'm kind of solo parenting for the rest of the evening. It's just me. Okay, I'm solo parenting 2 kids, 3 and under, 4 times a week. Fortunately, just 4, not 5 or 6. Okay. So I'm very blessed in that sense that I have a husband whose schedule allows for him to be present more so with me. And that makes a huge difference. I noticed that during those times, I would get really anxious. And it was a lot of times like I felt like I wanted to take them out, but I was nervous to take 2 small kids out by myself. It's a lot of work, just getting them in and out of the car, getting them ready, all of that stuff. But also staying in the house all day makes us all go crazy. So there was a lot of anxiety with that. Not to mention around dinner time, my kids they're getting better, but my kids were just in this phase of like, my toddler would just like push over my son who was just barely learning to walk, and he would fall and he would hit his head. And it was like, I had to keep a constant, like I couldn't even keep my eyes off of them for a minute. What? I'm not even exaggerating. I would turn around, boom, he's on the floor. Like, it is that intense. It's not so much like that anymore. Like, he's gotten better at dodging her, unfortunately. And I've managed ways to like kind of separate them, so that we can all get some space from each other. But yeah, there was just always a lot of anxiety. And I noticed that those feelings that I would feel, it took me a while to kind of unpack this, but I noticed that I would just go to my phone and I would just like scroll mindlessly to like mentally escape, because I just felt trapped in that situation. And I didn't even notice that I was doing it. That's the problem. And I realized too that like my daughter would act up. My toddler, who's now 3, would act up a lot more when I was like going on my phone a lot. So there was the whole me kind of escaping mentally and trying to like forget about the anxious feelings that I'm having, right? And going on like TikTok or Instagram and just doom scrolling, if you will. And I would notice like my daughter would be trying to get my attention, and I was so tuned into like what I was looking at or what I was like scrolling through. Mom. She would have to physically come up and like grab me, and you don't see yourself doing that, right? Like you might see like your significant other and their kids trying to get their attention, but think about like when you're trying to talk to someone and they're just on your phone. They're just on their phone and you're like, hello. Like if you go to a place of business and someone's just sitting on their phone and you're just like, hello, fucking pay attention to me. Hello. Right? Like it's frustrating, right? And it like gets your adrenaline pumping, or maybe your cortisol levels, maybe, I don't know. But you get frustrated, right? I get frustrated seeing someone sitting on their phone while they're supposed to be like in a place of business, like attending to customers. But our adult brains can kind of comprehend the fact that, okay, this person just, whatever, they're on their phone, they're just texting, whatever, it's not a big deal. And so we can kind of just like let it go instead of getting so upset over it. Our kids don't have that ability, especially if they're really young, like toddlers. They don't understand like that mom is on her phone because she just is on her phone. Doesn't mean that mom doesn't care about me as a person. They can't put that together. All they know is that right now, when I look at my mom, her phone is more important than me in this very moment. That is what they feel. Because I know I've felt that as an adult with my husband, say when I'm trying to talk to him and maybe he's scrolling, or vice versa, when I'm just scrolling and he's trying to talk to me and I'm not listening and he's, never mind, it's not important. That's the response I'll get, or I'll say something like that to him. So imagine how this is being processed in their brains. And again, I don't say this to like try and make you feel guilty. I'm just like trying to drive a point home because I do this a lot. And I'm actively working on it. And it is fucking hard because sometimes I'm just like so tempted to grab my phone and just like doom scroll. And I have to be very mindful in that moment and like ask myself, why am I scrolling? Why do I feel the need to scroll? What's going on? What am I feeling? What's going on in my body? Why do I feel anxious? What's happening? And a lot of times it's just my own self-deprecating thoughts of, oh, you're such a bad mom. Like you need to do this or you need to do that. Like your kids, they're eating this or they're eating that. Like you should be prepping meals or, you need to fucking work out. Like you need to do this or you have all this work that you got to catch up on creating content. Like all of these, especially when I start scrolling. When you're a content creator, there's almost this kind of like in the back of your mind, like you should be creating rather than consuming content. Like there needs to be a higher ratio of creation to consumption. Yeah, you do need to consume to an extent to like understand what trends are happening. But for the most part, it needs to be like, I would say 80% creation, 20% consumption. I pulled that out of my ass. Okay. So just, I'm not like a social media expert, but I would find myself like shaming myself and like feeling guilty for not creating content and just consuming content. But like, I don't want to share my kids. Or like take my attention away from them. So I just would be in my own head, like, I gotta create content, but then like, I don't want to like ignore them, so there's just always this like mental battle going on in my head. And one day I just decided, you know what? I'm going to put my phone upstairs because we have a 2-story house. I'm going to go put my phone upstairs and I have my Apple Watch so that if I need to get a call or I need to call someone or, an important text message comes through, I can answer it there. But I'm just going to leave my phone upstairs and I'm going to stay down here with these kids and I'm going to do whatever and like be present with them. And their attitude, more so my 3-year-old because my youngest is 1.5 years, but he's starting to catch on too. Their mood and their attitude changed drastically. And my daughter was just like so much more sweet and affectionate and just, I love you, mommy. And just her face, just how it lights up when I give her my full undivided attention. And so I want to share this as an encouragement to start for ourselves, really, but also for our kids. As a group, you can hold me accountable to this, ask me about it online, whatever, that we set boundaries when it comes to our screen time as it relates to our children, like minimizing how often we create content in front of them for the sake of giving them our undivided attention, or maybe not sharing them at all, or not sharing, maybe sharing them, just not their faces. I know that this is probably difficult, especially if you have so much time and maybe you have this window to create content, or get work done. I get it. But at the end of the day, I think we all just want to do better, right? Like we all just want to be better parents for our kids. And the thing about screen time and going on our phones and social media is that a lot of times it's just another form of escapism. I know it has been for me, for sure. And giving yourself a day or two a week where you just don't even go online. You're just dark days. Or, you know, once a month you take like a weekend, or like every 6 months, maybe you just take a whole week off. I think that this is something that needs to be normalized, quite honestly, because it's damaging, it's contributing to the mental health crisis. I do believe that, because I've seen how it affects me. And if you didn't listen to that episode with Heidi Rojas, we talked about that, how like on social media, a lot of times these mom creators, for the sake of maintaining a certain image, you know, for business purposes, really, let's be real, have to keep this picture perfect image of their kids, but they're not going to show the chaos. And I mean, let's be real, like when the chaos is happening, we're not going to fucking pull out our phone and record that shit, right? Like we're not gonna do that, which is part of the reason why you don't necessarily see that online. But also, I just think like that's something that you should not share regardless. But still, I think that it's important that we be mindful of how we're using technology and social media, especially if we're trying to become more mindful parents, if we're trying to heal, we're trying to make sure that we are the best versions of ourselves for our kids. Our kids deserve that, right? And so, yeah, this was this episode was intense, if I could put it that way. And I just think the more you know, the better, right? Like the more you know, it's better to be an informed parent as much as possible. And again, I don't even really talk about this much on social media or anything like that, but I think that it's a conversation that needs to be taken very seriously, because it's our children's lives, our children's livelihood, their privacy, their autonomy. Autonomy is something that, like, when it is taken away from someone, that can have very damaging effects to a person's psyche. It does. So, like, this is not something to be taken lightly. And because you all are mothers, most of you listening to this podcast, I'd imagine that power is in your hands. And so I hope that this episode really, and maybe it felt like a gut punch, but it was the type of gut punch that's like really like causes you to like take a different direction, you know, not necessarily like, oh, that was painful and didn't help. It was like, yeah, it was painful, but like it was like constructive criticism, you know what I mean? Like it was helpful, you know, but it hurt. Did it hurt? A little bit. But it's something that needed to be said. So if y'all get pissed, too bad, so sad. Oh well. But at the very least, I just ask that you share this episode. I look forward to connecting with you all again. I think I need to find a way to connect with you all better, just to know like what things do you want to hear more about. But I think that's about covers it for this episode. Let me know in the comments your takeaways. Drop a rating, a review. You can send me a DM on Instagram, again at moms.new.identity. Follow me on there so we can connect on there. Like I said, I'm trying to work on getting more active and connecting a little bit better with you all on there, because I really want to be able to know who you all are, so that we can really start to build a community of mothers that are trying to heal. Yeah, maybe a Facebook page, maybe a Facebook group. Y'all, I don't know. I just really don't like Facebook. So I don't know. But until next time, thank you so much for listening. I love you. Let's continue to heal together. Have a good one. Mom's New Identity podcast is produced and edited by your host, Amber Ivana. Intro music, Madre Creator, is written and performed by Heidi Rojas of Heidi Rojas Music.